Hey, 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 Blended Family Nation. Hello again. Great to be back with you. As always, we have outstanding guests. I want to tell you about our guest tonight, Jesse Hall. Jesse, welcome to Blended Family Nation.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be on USA BFA.
Well, it's great to have you, Jess. So, folks, let me tell you about our guest who's going to be an ongoing contributor to Blended Family Nation shows. And so, Jesse Hall has got a background that makes him uniquely qualified for being with us. On the exciting part, I can tell you this man has been a basketball referee in the NBA. So he's taken heckling and growls and looks from 6'11", 7'2", 6'2", whatever size, he's taken it. He was in Sports Illustrated once, pushing back Larry Bird. If you're a basketball fan, you'll know who Larry Bird is. In his early days, and then after his leaving professional basketball officiating, he became what's called a behavioral specialist in the education system, meaning that sometimes we have behavior that's challenging. And Jesse, for years and years, not only worked with youth, but helped them excel and grow and prosper. And I personally am aware of multiple people where he's taken young lives where they may have been going the wrong direction and lifted them up. And now today they're incredibly successful and productive. And that's why he's going to tell us a little bit today about his program called The Theory of 100. So you say, the theory of 100? What's the theory of 100, Dan? That's what Jesse's going to we're just going to do a little teasing and talk to you about that tonight, because in the weeks ahead, Jesse's going to have a program to be able to encourage youth and parents if they're interested. Jesse, the theory of 100. Give us the Jesse Hall 30,000-foot overview.
Yes, and thanks again, Dan. The theory of 100 came about back in about 1973 or 1974 when I was sitting in one of Dr. Taylor Spalding, who was my mentor at the great little Bethel College in North Newton, Kansas. But this theory of 100 is basically just a simple theory, because when you think about finances and money, you only get the opportunity to actually spend 100% of whatever it is you earn. And as the late and great Dr. Spalding would say, you don't get any more than that 100%. And you can break that down in many ways. But for children and for young folks, I put it into 5 basic different areas, as described by Dr. Spalding as he was speaking to us as sophomores, juniors, because this was not one of our senior classes, but anyways. And those categories were spend, save, school, tithes or church, and then the last of the 5 that most people don't even think about are taxes. And I like to start at the bottom end, because that one is automatic. No matter who you are, the government is going to get their portion generally before you get yours. And once you go in, and it's usually around about 20%. So no matter whatever your total income is, you start at about 20, and you can work your way up or down, just however you feel you need to try and make these numbers fit. But you want to start at about 20, just to make sure you're on the right side. And so when you look at it and you say, and this is what my kids said to me many, many times, that this theory is outdated. And I told them, you can try it any way you want. But from my own personal experience, the only way it works is that if you work the system. Because if you don't work the system the way it's described here, you're not probably going to be very successful.
Yeah, and I just want to say, folks, we're talking with Jesse Hall. He created the theory of 100 that he learned from a professor. And I should have noted earlier, Jesse, you grew up in Florida, outside of Miami, Florida, and Hollywood, Florida. And came to Kansas to play college football. Besides being that NBA ref, he was a college football athlete. And so we're talking about the theory of 100, and he's kind of going over the principles that, here's what I think. for a parent listening, you may want to teach your children or have them learn financial management, how to spend. And you go, I try to talk to them, but it's not, they don't listen to me. So here's a guy you could say is an NBA ref, college football player, teacher, and he's going to spend time. So Jess, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important that parents think about this. They go, hey, here's a way to help my kids learn about managing their money. So go ahead. You finished
Yes,
with the
Dan.
taxes part.
Just with the taxes part, and this started with my kids when one was born in 1980. That's our oldest child, who was born in August of 1980, and our son was born February of 1982. So there's about 18 months between those two kids. So they were 10 and 12 years old. And so I remember being in a store one time, and I don't know if anybody else has ever had this experience to happen, but I was tired. I was ready to go home, and the kids were out buying tennis shoes. And the wife was trying to buy them the cheapest thing in the store, and they didn't want those cheap tennis shoes. And then, so I'm just sitting and I'm going, oh, wait a minute, hold it. Stop. I said, everybody, time out, stop. Let's just look at something. I said, Sharon, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put $100 into these kids' hands right now. Here's your 100, and here's your 100. So you can buy any pair of tennis shoes today that you want to buy. Whatever you have left is up to you how you want to spend it. So they went over and they said, wait a minute. If I go over and I find a pair of tennis shoes that I like, I can keep the change? Yes. Because they were going back and forth over whether they were going to spend $59 for tennis shoes or $29, if I remember back then. And so I was just sitting there just kind of looking at the thing. And oddly enough, both kids went over and got a pair of tennis shoes for $29. And they said, so now, Dad, this is, yes, it's all yours. You can keep it. That's yours. And so it just made life so much easier because the money was theirs. It went. So then the next month came about, and I said to Sharon, okay, let's just try something a little bit different, but add to it. And that's when the theory of 100 came back to me as an individual. I said, because I don't want to just give you some money and say, okay, you can do this with it, you can do that with it, or whatever. I'm going to give you an opportunity to choose six. There are 5 basic categories. And again, the taxes is the one that you spend 20% on. But then when you go up, and then you see that there's tithes, and some folks say, yeah, but the tithing is 10%. So if you spend 20 plus the 10, you're already at 30, and now you expect to live off of just a 70. Well, you can do it any way you want again, but that's all you really have is what is there for you to spend. And I've had kids to say, so then why do I want to give a church my money? I said, I don't know. You tell me why you don't want to do it, and then we'll go from there. And it's interesting because most kids would say, well, giving my money to the church doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe, maybe not. But then if you read the good book or the Bible, you're going to learn that God requires all of us to give the 10. And what I've learned from my own personal experience, Dan, is that if you don't give him the 10, he'll take 10 and sometimes even more than the 10. So that one is kind of, out there, and kids will go back and forth. But then the school part, to where kids say, well, but then, we have books, we have this. The clothing and, those kind of things were not a part of this particular budget because, again, they are 10 and 12 years old. And as their parents, yes, we're going to help because, when you wear a size 10 tennis shoe in April, but if you go and move over to December, that size 10 may not fit a growing 10-year-old boy now turning 11 years old. And so you don't want the kid to walk around with his foot being uncomfortable. So now you've got those kind of things to think about. But also that's teaching your children to say, here's the deal with shoes. You can buy them to fit you perfectly, or you can buy them a little bit big and just grow into them. And so it was interesting to see how the kids began to learn how to think about how they really wanted to spend their money. And so when you do the school part and then you throw in the save and then get to the spend part is the most interesting for young kids, because if you go out on Friday nights, and again, growing up, I remember when my dad would take us to the local Dairy Queen every Friday night, and he would just say, hey, Dan, banana splits were 49 cents each. Yesterday, Sharon and I were coming back from down in the Wichita area, and I spent $4.99 for a banana split on yesterday.
But you got a banana split. That's the important thing.
Wasn't
You've
much
got
bigger
a
than the
good
one that I
banana
got back
split.
then,
And your dad is smiling in heaven. He's
and
saying,
it was
there's my
delicious.
boy eating a banana split again like I used to buy him.
There, yep. But you know what Dad was saying? There's no way I would have paid $4.99 for a banana split.
He's
But
still proud of his
again,
son.
those kind of things come up in life. Yeah. But those kind of things come up in life, and it makes it just so interesting as a parent as to how your children will react or interact in terms of thinking, man, how can I make this thing work? And I mean, they would stay up at night right up close to bedtime, and before we would pray, so everybody could go to bed and get a great night's rest. Now, there was no room and board charge to a 10 and a 12-year-old, so they didn't have to worry about that part. But we talked about those kind of things as they were coming up. So when they became ready to go away to college, and by the way, both of them went to college the same year because they were 18 months apart, and our son, he went over to Washburn University here in Kansas, and our daughter decided she wanted to get even farther away, and she went all the way to Ball State in Muncie, Indiana. Ball State in Muncie. And so just the cost of the schooling is kind of interesting in today's society. So as you go through this, don't get frustrated. Just keep on allowing your children to think about what it is they want to do with the monies that you're going to give them to spend. But like I said, you don't want to start it out with big money. But $100 back then was $100. And so I don't know if that means it's $300 today or $500 or even $50. It just depends on, how you as the parent want to do that. But just to give you just a brief overall
what's
picture
really cool about this is
theory
really
works.
What you're teaching, coaching, mentoring here is a technical term. They call it critical thinking, meaning, you process of thinking through things where and I can look in the mirror. Sometimes I've impulse bought. And when you're a teenager and you see like those tennis shoes or that dress or something, that jewelry, whether you're boy or girl, there's always going to be something that you want to get. And so what you're helping them and what we'll be doing in the weeks ahead is where Jesse, and actually we'll have live interaction where kids can be on a Zoom and actually ask Jesse some questions. And I don't think they can stump you because, like I said, you've been challenged by NBA players and school and the best of the best or the worst of the worst in public schools in America. So you could be able to handle it. But what we're trying to do with the Theory of 100 by Jesse Hall is help our children. Another aspect of USA BFA. It just isn't about the challenges of parenting. We're trying to give a 360 degrees, make lives better. And part of that is teaching young folks good financial management and decision making, that critical thinking, we might say as adults. But if you're 12 or 18, what you're going to teach them, Jess, will echo throughout their lives.
And Dan, that's exactly it. You want to, like, I worked full time. Sharon was at home at the time. And so when they went grocery shopping, they had to stay home, do the ads. They wrote out their grocery list and, things that they were going to purchase while they were out at the grocery store in terms of, soft drinks and just, whatever it was that they decided. And then they made their menus. And so it was their job at 10 and 12 years old, as we started this, to help think this whole process through. And you're 100% right. That critical thinking part really kicks in now. About the second or third time these kids start going to the store with mom and sometimes with mom and dad. And then you look at that and you go, man, I think they've really got the hang of this thing, because rather than, I always like, and back in the South, I always call them pecans, which are really pecans, I suppose, when you think about the way you guys say it around here. And so, but then somebody else might like walnuts. So why is it then do we have to buy both pecans and walnuts on this particular grocery time if the money is kind of funny? Those kind of things come up before you go to the grocery store. You're not going to go to the grocery store and start thinking that impulsive buying, you just talked about.
Yeah.
You want to go in with a plan. That's kind of, it's kind of like coaching or refereeing. You sit down and you talk about how you're going to manage that particular game. Well, life is the same way. You have to have a plan when you go in and you stick with your plan.
Oh,
Your
that's great.
positioning and all that other stuff is so important as you get into the art of officiating. And that's a whole nother story, but it's also a part of life when you think about, how do you get kids to buy into this thought of, man, we're going to the grocery store. For example, my kids, they hated liver, okay? They just hated to eat liver. Well, I kind of like liver, but they always said they thought it was nasty and nobody should eat it. Okay, fine. So if you don't want liver, you don't have to eat liver. But what are you going to replace that liver with? Well, you can buy chicken. There are lots of things that you can go to the store and still buy. But then you want to make sure that you can afford to buy whatever it is you want to buy. And sometimes you have to save for that. It eventually, as they got older, we just didn't go to the grocery store and just shop. We would buy bulk meats and go and like the summer season now ending, we would have like a small family garden, and it was part of the kids' assignment to make sure that that garden was taken care of.
Yeah.
So you can make it a fun for yourself and also for your children.
Well, that's right, and that's what we're going to do. And I think you got through your 5-point the initial explanation, right?
I was going to say spend, save, school, tithes, and taxes. Just remember 3 S's and 2 T's.
What we're going to do in the weeks ahead, and the reason why you're thinking, well, this is a unique service that USA BFA is offering. But I will tell you, not only is it going to be unique and coach and mentor and educate and teach your children some good ways to think about money, but they're going to have a fun time when we do this because they'll be able to ask questions. And I can tell you how I met Jesse Hall was refereeing college basketball. And I can tell you that he will make you and your children smile with any question you ask him because he makes coaches that are screaming at him. The next thing you know, they're smiling and laughing. So you're going to enjoy this. Jesse Hall, The Theory of 100. You stay with us. You got a little bit out of this quick overview of it. In the weeks ahead, we'll be going in more detail to each level and letting our kids ask questions and parents ask questions. So Jesse, thanks. You are a gift. You've helped so many people. You helped me in basketball and life, and so we're glad to have you part of the USA BFA team. And folks, stay tuned. You'll see Jesse again. Thanks for listening to Blended Family Nation with Jesse Hall, The Theory of 100.
Thank you so much, Dan.